Okay, it says we're live.
All right, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. This is James Bond, Bitcoin Live episode 0015. I have a very special guest. Brian's very happy. I'm very happy. It's Jackson Palmer. Maybe some of you know him or some of you don't, but he is one of the co-founders of Dogecoin. Please, Jackson Palmer, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Absolutely. Thank you first up, thank you for having me on the show. Happy to talk to you guys. Yeah, so I'm that guy that put the dog on the coin, and I've been in cryptocurrencies for many years now. But what I'm kind of most infamous for is back in late 2013, coining the name Dogecoin, and then kind of running a bunch of stuff early on in Dogecoin in those first few years. And more recently, so I took a break from cryptocurrency for a while, and then more recently, I've started to get back into it with a YouTube series that I'm doing, and starting to advise some other companies.
Can you tell the audience how you first started the Doge? I mean, where did this idea come from for people who don't know? But how did it all begin? And tell us what happened afterward, which led up to its explosion in popularity. Because back then, when I got into Bitcoin, I think that was before Doge came around, but it became so popular that it was like Bitcoin was on the top of the list, then it was Litecoin, and it was Dogecoin. So there was like 1, 2, 3, and all the websites were taking Doge as one of the payments as well. So tell us the beginning, and then how it kind of led up to that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it all started. I remember it was quite a hot day back in Australia where I'm from, because it was December, which is our summer back there, and I had like gotten home from work. I was working for Adobe back then. I still work for Adobe. Gotten home after work, cracked a beer open, and was just kind of like reading my RSS feeds. And I stumbled across this article by a journalist called Adrian Chen on Gawker that was about the Doge meme. And obviously we'd all been seeing it like kind of in late 2013, but this article was kind of explaining like how it was a pure meme. It was kind of, nobody could kind of take it and use it for nefarious purposes. It was something that could not be perverted. It was that pure smirking Shiba Inu looking at the camera. And so I kind of like loved the Doge meme instantly and found it hilarious. But my other kind of habit at that time was to go and check on altcoins and go to CoinMarketCap. And so I jumped over to CoinMarketCap, and the list was, I don't even think they had 100 on the 100 coins on the list back then. But I was just looking at kind of like what the market was doing. Bitcoin was like worth a fraction of what it is today. Litecoin was just going through its recent through its run where it went up to like $60 or $70. And I thought, Dogecoin. And I just kind of thought to myself, maybe some of it was the beer that I was drinking. But I went over to Twitter and just posted kind of like this innocent tweet. I'm going to invest in Dogecoin. It's the next big thing. And kind of didn't think anything of it. Went, had dinner, went to bed, and then the next day I like woke up and my like Twitter notifications were like blowing up. I'm like, what? Like, what is this? And so a lot of people found it funny. And at that point, nobody had really suggested that it be a real thing. So I thought, you know what? It's a hilarious name. I'm just going to go and, buy that domain. I'm kind of like addicted to buying domains on a whim. It's my thing I do. So I went and bought Dogecoin.com, and I just like went into Photoshop and superimposed the Doge face over a picture of just some coin off Google Images, put up a simple website. It said the favored, cryptocurrency of Shiba Inus worldwide, and just posted the URL to Twitter. And it just like became a really popular tweet. A lot of people were retweeting it stuff, especially in the Bitcoin scene. So at around the same time, my co-founder Billy was hanging out in some IRC channels, and somebody must have posted it there. And so he found this tweet, and at the same time, he was kind of interested in like hacking around on the code bases of these coins, similar to what I was, my interest at the time. And he reached out to me. He replied to the tweet, and he said, "Hey, what if we can? his actual words, I think, were, "Hey, I just realized we can change the font to Comic Sans in the Bitcoin client. Let's do this." And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? So, you know, I think in the space of like 2 days or something like that, he worked on the code side and was like, you know, forked some other coin. I think it was called Lucky Coin, and we agreed that there should be like 100 billion Dogecoin because, you know, that's what Dr. Evil says in Austin Powers. And I did the, you know, the kind of announcement and, you know, some of the marketing side and, you know, put all that up. And we just released it to the world. And we just thought to ourselves, this is going to be funny. You know, it's like everybody's taking everything so seriously right now. There's coins coming on, you know, all these kind of coins, and the start of scam coins was starting to come out then. So we're just like, everybody needs a little bit of fun, you know, to have a bit of a laugh. So we released it and we started mining it a little bit, you know, but our graphics cards weren't really that great. And so we might have mined like, you know, under 10 million Doge collectively amongst the two of us. And we're just like, yeah, this is a bit of fun. And within about 24 hours, we're like, holy crap, we can't mine this thing anymore. The difficulty is too high. And, you know, we're like, we need to get like pools running. And so people started setting up mining pools around this dog on a coin. And we're like, what is going on? And so it just continued to evolve. I think it really kind of came home to me when about a week or two later, I got journalists from like Business Insider and Vice kind of reaching out to me and saying, hey, we want to interview you about Dogecoin. I'm like, what on earth is happening? Like, how is this even possible? And then I got listed on exchanges and like went up to like a, you know, crazy market cap, which at the time was only $60 million. I guess that's not crazy in today's world. But, and then, you know, at the time, what we thought is, what we wanted to avoid was the thing becoming too serious, right? And I think that was always the intent of the thing, is to make people take themselves a little bit less seriously, and along the way learn something about cryptocurrency. And so we decided to start running these charity drives. And so we had people suggesting kind of like donation ideas on or charity ideas on Reddit, which the community was growing like at an exponential rate. And we set up this really kind of hacky thing, the Dogecoin Foundation, where we'd collect that and you know, send the money to the people. And so, you know, the first big thing that we did was we sent the Jamaican bobsled team to the Winter Olympics, which was huge, and that got us a lot of press coverage. And then we went on and we did some stuff that was kind of more actual charities, like Doge for Kids, which was we raised like $30,000 for kind of support dogs for autistic children. And
now, Jackson, let me ask you real quick. Yeah. When did Ryan Kennedy or Alex Green come into the picture?
Oh yeah.
Did he come into the picture during that donation time? I mean,
so I'm getting to that. Yes, okay, absolutely. Okay. So what happened was, yeah, no, absolutely. So at this point, like Dogecoin was still kind of like a niche thing, is what I'll call it, right? It was a curiosity, a funny thing that was happening in the Bitcoin world. And we were doing these charities. We did the Doge for Kids. We did Doge for Water with like charity water. We raised money. And as it was getting kind of like more and more press coverage, we started to see these kind of like corporate interests pop up, right? It was no longer just this like this joke coin with a cool Reddit community that were helping other people out. There were corporate interests getting involved. And, you know, the first kind of like thing on Reddit was Doge tip bot, but that was really a community thing, right? So you could tip money to people, and a lot of people would like send one another like 100 Dogecoin and just laugh about it. I actually think that helped with Dogecoin's kind of virality, and that is the distribution was like free, and there's like millions of people using it because, you know, it's not expensive and you didn't have to mine it. You could just go on Reddit. But yeah, as I was saying, as it got more and more popular, some of the kind of, you know, slime balls kind of started getting involved. And, you know, one of them that kind of came out of nowhere was this guy that was operating under the alias Alex Green with a service called Moolah. And that's kind of like a dirty word in cryptocurrency circles now. But at the time...
What kind of service was Moolah? What was it?
Yeah. Moolah was like a e-commerce service in a way. So it was kind of like a wallet, like a very basic wallet. But their premise was that you could like set up like a really quick storefront, for instance, and like sell something. It's kind of like a Shopify or something for Dogecoin. And they supported other coins as well. Like that's important to note, is that They did support like Litecoin and other coins as well. It wasn't just Doge, but it really, they marketed extremely heavily to the Dogecoin community. And at first I was like, why not? Like adoption's cool. Like as long as these guys aren't doing anything super shady. But then I started like noticing that they were, giving out huge amounts of Dogecoin, like ridiculous amounts on Reddit. And then they did this thing that was called the Moolah Pi. And I actually think this is kind of like the first ICO, actually. It probably predates all other ICOs because it happened back in like early 2014. But basically what they said was, they said to a bunch of random people on Reddit, they said, hey, we're trying to raise like, $750,000. And if you just send some Bitcoin or Dogecoin or any coin here, we'll give you like a receipt basically for that. And it's kind of like you get a slice of the pie is what they called it. And when that started happening, alarm bells started ringing in my kind of head. And it started ringing in one of my friend or another guy that got involved with Dogecoin, Ben Dornberg. We were both kind of like, I don't know what we think about this. Like, it's a dog on a coin, and this guy wants to raise like $750,000 around it. But everybody was so excited back then with cryptocurrency. It was kind of going through its first heyday that they started supporting this thing. And to make matters worse, the guy's name was Alex Green, which, not for a second did either of us believe that is his real name. Like, come on. And so, yeah, and he was very sketchy about his past. He wouldn't, ever show his face on camera. He would never talk about his history with cryptocurrency or anything like that. He's all just like, I'm a cryptocurrency expert. Trust me, and send me $750,000. And people did. People put in $750,000 of all sorts of cryptocurrencies as just like an IOU.
And basically, I remember the video you're talking about. Who was the guy's name? Ben what? Dorndorf?
Ben Dornberg, yeah. So like kind of,
yes.
Yeah. So what happened was that, I was very kind of on the fence about this guy. And then it kind of increasingly got snowballed, if you will, into kind of like more and more concern. And so what happened, we were running the Dogecoin Foundation separately, right, which we knew was all above board. All of our faces are on it. Happy days. But he was running, he started to say, you know what, I want to run all the charities. Like, I think I should be the one that holds all the wallets for the charities. And we're like,
talking about Alex Green?
Alex Green, yeah. He's like, hey, I have this great service. I should hold them all. And so that was kind of like the beginning of the disagreement. And it kind of culminated in when they sponsored the NASCAR, right? So when they came in and they said, hey, we want to do this NASCAR thing, but on the condition that we run the wallet and we control the whole charity, Ben and I were like, okay, back off. Like, I'm not being involved in Dogecoin charities at the moment because this just does not leave a good taste in my mouth. And so they sponsored the NASCAR, and the Moolah logo was all over the NASCAR and was all over the promotional stuff. And I was like, ugh, this feels like really seedy. But the Dogecoin happened, and I thought it was hilarious, right? Like, of course it was hilarious. But they were really using it as kind of like a publicity stunt. And they used it, they invested a bunch of money to then raise more money. And so it came to my attention that they were doing additional kind of pie sales, more of this ICO stuff behind closed doors, kind of like private.
So they were issuing more receipts.
Exactly. They were basically taking people's money saying, hey, you're investing in a business. You might be, and these people weren't like accredited investors. They were like, 18-year-old kids who were spending money they could have spent on college or food or rent on Reddit. They were stealing money from them, basically. And I just could not get down with that. And so
they were sending Dogecoin. Is that the deal?
So they were sending Dogecoin, and the reason that they were, so because they sponsored the Doge car and because they were throwing, they were tipping a lot of people in Dogecoin, the bulk of money that went into this ICO Moolah Pi thing came from the Dogecoin community. So like, I felt really bad because, 6 months ago, I'd put a dog on a coin thinking it would be harmless. Flash forward 6 months, and this guy who I think is a scammer is, extorting people for money basically, and then just giving them, thin air or a receipt. And so Ben and I were very, very, very vocal about this. And we basically said to the community, we think this guy is a fraud. We don't believe in him. It all culminated in a video call. And I think, is that what you were referring to before?
Yes, yes, I have that link in the notes if anybody wants to see it, because I remember watching it myself when it came out, and then go ahead from there.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it all culminated in, me pressuring this Alex Green to get on a call with me and Ben, who are running the Dogecoin Foundation, and to kind of like prove who he is and just get some background on him, and just kind of understand like where is his business registered, because we couldn't find any like proper business records, like where's his LinkedIn profile that says he's ever had any kind of reputable background as Alex Green. And where are they getting all this money that they're throwing around, right? Like they donated like tens of thousands of dollars to the NASCAR thing. Like where'd they get that money from? The answer, which we later found out, was from the Moolah pie. They were just spending all the money that people were giving. So anyway, it culminated in that phone call. And in that call, Ben and I just basically accused Alex Green of just not being Alex Green. We basically said, look, Ben's going to, resign from the foundation. I don't really want anything to do with it. At the time, I'm just like, Jesus, guys, like, just settle down. And basically, after that call, Ben and I went on the record on Reddit and said, you know what? This Alex Green guy is kind of a shyster, we think. And, this kind of went on. It didn't just all happen overnight. It kind of dragged on for a couple of months. There was actually, sadly, the death of somebody that was really important in the community. So one of the artists who was doing Dogecoin Ball, unfortunately, there was a death in the community, and to kind of like raise money for that charity, or for a charity that went towards like mental health, the Moolah said, "Oh, we're going to collect money and use this
Oh
thing."
no!
Right, and I just saw this instantly. I'm like, they're using somebody's death as short, like donating to charity is great, but don't use this tragic event as a way to try and promote your crypto scam. Right? And so I was very vocal about this on Reddit, but because they garnered such favor with the community by giving away all this money, people thought that they were invested in this company, so they were never going to badmouth it, right? They're all like, Jackson and Ben, you guys are traitors, get out of here. That basically, people came for me with pitchforks and, shovels and torches and saying, how dare you, trash our savior, Moolah. And at that point, that's kind of when I just said, you know what, I'm backing away from the Dogecoin community, because I find this it's toxic and it's a little bit cult-like, to be honest.
Now, I did remember you ended up reading a report, you saying that.
I did.
And you did say that, and you obviously, you're telling us that's how you felt, but do you see some parallels now? Because a lot of people say that about Ethereum.
I absolutely do. Yeah, I think it was, it was obviously a lot less money, but it was still money. And I think the kind of cult of personality is very similar in things like Ethereum. And so, but I got to finish the story first.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
So anyway, so I kind of backed away from things and was like, I'm just going to partake in the fun stuff, the joke stuff, the funny Doge memes, because you know what, that's harmless. But flash forward, I think it was late 2014, and Moolah, surprise, surprise, declares that it's gone bankrupt. And, oh, sorry, all that Moolah pie that you invested, we're not going to be able to refund that. And instantly I'm like, well, I called that, didn't I? But I felt really bad for all the people that had lost money, all these people that had basically shouted me out of the community and been out of the community. I didn't want to go back and say, ha, I told you so. I felt bad. They were kids, and people that couldn't afford to lose that money. And it just left everybody. It also left a sour taste in the mouth of people about cryptocurrency. Like, I'm never going to do that again. Some guy scammed me, and it was really sad because nobody knew who this guy was. They were just like, "Yep, we're shutting up shop. Goodbye." But thankfully, that news got covered on TechCrunch. And it just so happens an ex-partner of Alex Green, who we later found out to be called Ryan Kennedy, saw the headline on TechCrunch, because it's more of a mainstream non-cryptocurrency blog, and was like, hold on, that's not Alex Green. That picture's of Ryan Kennedy. And from there, I got an email from a bunch of people that have all been scammed by him in the past. Like, believe it or not, he actually ran a Magic the Gathering scam over in the UK at one point. But, this guy is notorious, and they actually linked me to a link on Encyclopedia Dramatica. This guy's got a 10-year history of running scams where he runs conferences for anime people and doesn't doesn't actually show up, things like that. And they said, yep, his name's Ryan Kennedy. And they gave me very definitive proof. Like, this person had a bunch of stuff around other crypto scams that he'd done. They had like printouts of his like license, his driver's license and stuff like that. It was like, we know this guy is Ryan Kennedy. And so I kind of went back to the community with that. And, you know, a lot of people started pursuing that and, you know, lodging reports with, you know, the Criminal Bureau investigation over in the UK. And I kind of thought, you know, it's crypto, maybe nothing will ever happen. But, you know, flash forward a couple of years, and just, I think it was late last year, his face showed up again on some blogs in the UK and news outlets in the UK for something completely unrelated to crypto. He was actually jailed for 11 years for the serial rape of multiple women. Like, that's how much of a kind of sicko this guy is.
Yeah, that was what he was originally arrested for, right?
Right. That's what he originally got arrested for. And I guess once that went in, people started, you know, a lot more people saw it from crypto and they're like, we're going to nail this guy. So they continued pushing on it. And he was just recently, it was in the news about a week or two ago, he was just recently charged with fraud for all the stuff that he did with Moolah. So I think that's kind of a good end of the story. You know, it's sad those people won't ever get back that money. But, you know, there was some form of justice in the end for what he did. I really feel like he kind of decimated the community, and the community had a hard time recovering after that because they've been taken advantage of so much, and, you know, their whole like world got blown up.
Yeah, I kind of get that sense too, that how one person could just come into a community
Mm-hmm.
and it takes one bad actor and ruined it all. Because if you you know, other than I don't know much about the technical and fundamental details. I'll
Mm-hmm.
get into that later, but just the aspect of some bad actor that comes in, it just ruined Doge forever. It almost seems like.
Well, I think it was because it's this cult of personality thing. I think it's that if the bulk of people in a community become so faithful to an individual person and that person wrongs them so badly, it leaves a scar, and I think it leaves a very bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people. And they're just kind of conflicted. Like, you know, I think a lot of them probably just feel like idiots because they're like, oh shit, like I fell for it, you know. And nobody likes to find out that they were the butt of a scam, right? You know, I've been through it. Everybody's been through it. So, you know, I feel sorry for them. I think what's interesting is the parallels that you were drawing to ICOs, right? Because and Ethereum in general. What's kind of interesting. So that was a lot less money. That was only $750,000, right? Back in the day.
Right.
Now we're talking about 300 million in a single ICO. So
yeah, and they're doing like 50 ICOs, like an ICO every day now.
Exactly right. So I was mentioning my YouTube series. The reason that I've kind of come back into the space is because I get this like whole kind of like Moolah feeling all again, right? Like as soon as I started having a lot of friends and family come to me and say, should I invest in this thing? I'm probably going to get rich off it. I was like, oh no, like this is like, you know, Moolah V2, you know, bad feelings. And so I started doing those YouTube videos as really a way of trying to educate people around like how to protect themselves, understanding the technology before they like blindly throw money at it. And I think, you know, the personality thing's interesting. And I think whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was or is was very intelligent in not attaching their face or their name to it, because that has resulted in a lack of this kind of cult of personality, right? Like people can gather around this single person, but Satoshi Nakamoto doesn't have a voice anymore. And that's what's so important. You have communities in the Ethereum community, namely Vitalik, you know, and people revere this guy as kind of like the Ethereum god. And I think that, you know, in a decentralized system has all sorts of dangerous implications. In a way, the fact that Bitcoin is so fractured right now on this whole like how to scale debate is actually an indication that decentralization and the consensus protocol is working, because no one person has been able to come in and say, nope, this is what we're doing. So I actually see some of this indecision that Bitcoin's going through as kind of a testament to the resiliency of the network. Whereas Ethereum, they hard fork with every release, and they just like, trust us. We're just gonna do this thing. And I think there's similar personalities that are popping up behind these ICOs. So you'll notice that with most of the ICOs, there is kind of like a Ethereum or Bitcoin famous person running that ICO and kind of pumping them up and saying, yeah, this thing's going to go to like, $1,000. We're going to make a lot of money on this, change in the future. But a lot of them, their white papers, if you read them, have barely any substance. Their product doesn't exist. And if you look on Etherscan, they're actually dumping all the money that they're raising, frantically, because they probably want to liquidate it. So, I worry, and I think, but the good thing is that if justice was served with Moolah, then my hope is that if some of these ICOs do turn out to be scams, that in a similar way, they'll kind of be exposed and legal action taken. And that's not to say, like, I want to be very clear that that's not to say that I like have an ill opinion of any of these people necessarily. And I think that there are legitimate businesses out there that are using it as a way to bootstrap their business. But do you really need to raise $100 million? No, right? You're building like a little thing for the blockchain. Do you really need, like, go and raise a seed round of maybe $1 million and then come back to me once you have a product? And in Ethereum's case, in Vitalik's case, like, I don't blame him. I think he was relatively young when he came up with the idea of Ethereum. This whole kind of like Ethereum developer community just like kind of engulfed him and came around him. And he had no idea that the price was going to like, completely go through the roof. And as such, I think, he didn't have the luxury that Satoshi Nakamoto had to distance himself from it. He was thrust into this position. And now he probably has to watch everything he says. Like, whenever he posts to Twitter, he's probably second guessing himself, thinking like, how's this going to be misinterpreted? And so, I think it's a tough position. Like, if any of us were put in that position, I don't know what I would do either. I'd probably just be like, okay, I'm changing my name or something and just never see me again. Like,
you should probably do like a Satoshi Nakamoto and just disappear,
Well, and I've talked to a few reporters lately, and they've asked me, why didn't Vitalik do the same thing as Satoshi Nakamoto? And the problem is he didn't have the luxury, right? The good thing about Bitcoin was the first kind of implementation of that, of Nakamoto consensus. And, there hadn't been a person getting around at Bitcoin conferences talking about this cool new idea they had for like 3 years in advance. Vitalik, started out in Bitcoin. And so he'd been, kind of circulating these ideas with his peers and stuff at conferences. So even if he had released Ethereum under a pseudonym, it's very likely that people would have been able to backtrack. Oh, that's that guy that told me about the exact same thing at this Bitcoin conference like 2 years ago. It would be much easier to track. So he just didn't have the luxury,
Well, when I say he should do a Satoshi Nakamoto, I mean he should just stop tweeting and stop going to conferences, retire. He should just retire while he can with money, and just spend it all.
I see. Well, I think it's hard for him, right? Like, he is a very intelligent person, and I think he legitimately wanted to build really cool open source software to solve smart contracts and distributed computing. Like, I actually have a theory that I don't think it really is about the money for him. I think it is very much about changing the world in a positive way.
Well,
and
Jackson,
it's all open source, right?
You have to remember, you probably had something similar, right? I mean, I've kind of watched you or heard about you, and I watched the Doge community, and the Doge community is known for having fun, not being taken serious, right? And then all of a sudden their meme became worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And now Ethereum, you see some parallels in that. I'm sure even if Vitalik had some good intentions, his whole blockchain is worth billions now, and that's got to change his
absolutely
situation.
Yeah, it does. Like, it changed me as well. Like, I think I had to be careful about like what I said to a certain degree. Like, I don't, I tend to speak my mind, but I think in his case, it's a little different, right? Because I think he is actively in charge of, driving development for that thing. Whereas, one of the things that I very quickly wanted to do after, the first 6 months was hand development over to a team that, were not me. And so, we really quickly established this group of people as developers, that were maintaining it for the subsequent years. And I was kind of just like the caretaker. And, the beauty of that is that I couldn't like influence like huge protocol changes necessarily. you know, and I chose those people because I knew all of them, if I said something stupid, would call me out on it and not just blindly implement it. Because I'd kind of developed a relationship with them over the first 6 months of Dogecoin. I think Vitalik has this problem, whereas everybody is going to be his best friend, right? Everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, right? You know, and you know, he had some people like, you know, Gavin Wood and some others who I think could like kind of stand up to him a little bit and you know, critique his work. I think the problem is that there is so much noise in this industry right now. Like, and a lot of that noise is just investors yelling, make it worth more, make it worth more. It's actually kind of sad in my opinion, because the conversation has gone from, you know, let's build really cool technology to let's try and extract more capital from this thing. And you know, that's hard from a development standpoint. You know, I posted today on Twitter, I was like, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency interests me because it's the first kind of open source piece of software where the problem being solved, like, you know, primarily is making users profit. And that's a very strange thing, right? Like, how do you as an open source development community make more people rich based on the speculative market? You can't, right? So it's kind of like you can never give the people what they want, which I think is a very interesting kind of calamity.
Now, do you think this whole recent bubble, and I would even say it is a bubble somewhat. Now, whether it's going to pop soon or later, I don't know. But do you think it's going to end well? I mean, usually bubbles don't end well, but you've gone through the bubble with Doge, Bitcoin, the first series of recent since 2013, and I remember like people literally killed themselves. I mean, there's some people that committed suicide for whatever reason. And so I joke around and I troll around and I leave an 800 number to the National Suicide Lifeline. They think I'm trolling or joking. I'm not. I'm serious.
I remember I was there when it happened back in like early 2014. I remember there was one day some guy was saying, "Hey, I've taken a partial mortgage out on my home to invest in Bitcoin." The next day, 80% of the volume the price crashed, and the whole subreddit just turned to suicide hotline numbers. Like, it's crazy, right? And unfortunately, history is repeating itself, and we're making the same mistakes. But I think what's happening is that there's a lot of kind of like more, you know, experienced Bitcoiners, people that have been in the space for a long time like us, that probably have a more grounded kind of viewpoint of this whole thing, right? I think what Ethereum did was it brought in a lot of fresh blood, like a lot of people kind of in their early 20s, a lot of people that come from other development backgrounds, a lot of JavaScript developers, a lot of people that don't know that history, right? And so they come in and they're just as excited as we were back when we were, you know, hurtling towards a crash, you know, at increased velocity. And I think that they don't necessarily they've never been hurt by that before. And so this whole like ICO mania, I think, comes from a place of people that haven't experienced what that can do to an industry before. So yeah, I think it's not a case of like if it'll happen. I think it's a case of when. And I think we need to have that kind of triggering moment that will potentially create the kind of slide. Like, things are already kind of normalizing down a little bit, but I think there's going to be something that happens. You know, I saw something today, Storage or Storage, I don't know how you say it, but you know, these guys like did like 2 ICOs or something, and you know, and the CEO got kicked out, and then the rest of the CTO and the CFO are both MIA, and so the whole development team for Storage is gone. Meanwhile, it's you know hundreds of millions of dollars in market cap. Okay, and as soon as
maybe they'll start a Storage K after it. Just put down K, HIJK.
Let's have an ICO for the ICO for the ICO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like so when I see little things like that starting to pop up, I'm like, oh, this is the kind of thing that's going to trigger it. You know, like one of these things. You know, a bunch of Ethereum developers that were really like excited because they made some money lose, 20% of that money. Ooh, that's when people start getting really upset, and they start saying, "Was this thing legal?" was this thing that I got involved in legal, and then they start whispering class action lawsuit, and then the SEC's like, we have to check this out now, right?
They've been waiting. As my opinion, they've been waiting. They just want somebody to invite them so they look
need,
good.
like, and that's the thing, right? Like, everybody's positive and everything when you're in a bubble, right? Because there's this euphoria, and people are making stupid decisions and doing things that aren't necessarily legal, and raising $300 million. Like, who needs to do that for a blockchain startup? But anyway, they're doing this crazy stuff, and a lot of people aren't thinking about the ramifications of it. Typically only when something crashes and investors get hurt, then the regulators come in and they're like, okay, like, you didn't give us a choice. Like, we have all this other stuff we were trying to work on, but you guys just went and essentially stole $300 million from people and didn't deliver on it. Right. And that's the kind of thing that I think is going to trigger it. Like, I think, unfortunately, there are some really interesting people who are trying to forward the technology and build stuff, whether it's on Ethereum or other kind of distributed computing technologies. And they're raising, like, they're just going through traditional startup venture capital, which I think is a great idea. Or they're, doing very small ICOs with, like, accredited investors. And I think that's fine. I think that's, if that helps them get, like, actual technology built, and one thing on my checklist is, do they already have a working prototype? That's a good sign. I think the unfortunate thing when this thing bursts is that all the good guys, all the people that were trying to do the right thing and develop the technology, are going to get hurt by it, because it's going to, the kind of, like, mainstream opinion of cryptocurrency, when it loses billions of dollars to people and the SEC come marching in, it taints the whole industry, right? Nobody's going to want to touch it. And that's done a real disservice to the technology. I was speaking to some people the other day about how I think that cryptocurrency and decentralized payments is very much like the early internet protocol. And the coins are kind of like the early internet companies. And people are investing in them, right? And there was a dot-com bubble burst, that it hurt a lot of people. I think the difference is that as these ICO, well, there's two differences. Firstly, a lot of these ICOs aren't doing anything for the technology of Bitcoin or for decentralized payments. It's just a cash grab to build some stupid thing that shouldn't even be on a blockchain. But secondly, the early internet companies were at least regulated, right, by, like, trade and security laws. I think that the impact of the dot-com bubble, the reason it didn't kill the entire industry, is because there was regulation, there were rules in place. But because we're operating in the Wild West with Bitcoin, and you literally have, like, over $1 billion raised in random ICOs now, I think that the outcome of that is going to be that everybody gets hurt. And it could be one of these things that actually kills the technology. And that's what really, that's why, the internet didn't die when the dot-com bubble happened. But blockchain, decentralized payments could well die when you have a market crash, like this 100 billion market cap crashes overnight. Like, that could hurt everybody, and that's a real shame.
I don't know if it'll kill Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure it's going to kill Ethereum and any of the other platforms that are acting like unregulated exchanges, Waves, Lisk, Omni to some degree, and even some of these, not even I guess these newer coins that the idea of Ethereum, they're just creating a blockchain to create ICOs now, and that seems to be the new thing. I think
it's nuts. There's literally ICOs, which are platforms to create ICOs on Ethereum. Like,
is that like EOS? Is that what you're talking about? EOS is a platform on Ethereum to create an ICO.
Bancor.
So they're just that's the business model of Ethereum, is to create ICOs or just create Ponzi's, in my opinion, or pyramids. People think I'm joking when I say that.
It's like multi-level marketing, right? And what's really scared me lately is somebody suggested to me, what if these people that are running, what if the people investing, because the big question that comes up is, who's investing $100 million? Where's all this capital coming from, right? And somebody suggested to me recently, like, what if the people that are cashing out from ICOs are reinvesting in other ICOs? And that just like blew my mind. It's like, oh my God, what if that is actually the case? Like,
Yeah, that's what I've been telling people. This is how they're compounding their gains in a way. They're investing in an
exactly.
ICO. They're making money. It goes to market. People are buying the tokens, and they're cashing out of that into Ethereum, and then they're going, "Hey, let's do it again." And they're just doing it. And so there's really no money that's being made. It's just a number on an exchange and the money is somewhere, but but by then it's gone. People have already probably cashed out of that.
It's literally a multi-level pyramid scheme. It's crazy, right? And so I think there's a lot of kind of problems, and I think, you know, it's interesting to me that like the first use case on Ethereum was doing this stuff. Like, I think, you know, that's actually kind of on the Ethereum developers for like when they release this thing. Why didn't they have like example smart contracts that did stuff that's actually useful? Nope. Let's go and standardize on the ERC20 token so people can spin up their own, you know, Ponzi schemes.
Well, because it makes no money. That's why.
Agreed. I agree. I understand.
You know, raising donations,
yeah.
raising donations is far more profitable than trying to actually create something that's useful at this point.
And that's why, yeah, and that's why I think it made it harder to scam on like Bitcoin and stuff, because you couldn't, like, there was a certain level of technical effort required to fork Bitcoin and release something like that. You know, more so than with ICOs. It's like you can do it in, you know, 10 minutes. It's nothing.
Jackson, let me ask you about the Bitcoin potential split or the SegWit 2x. What is your whole take on this situation? And then we'll go to some questions from the audience and from the Reddit and Twitter.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. So I think, like I said, I actually think the whole thing is testament to the resiliency of Bitcoin. I've actually gained a lot of respect for Bitcoin as a protocol that nobody has been able to come in and like force the hand of the thing. Now, that being said, UASF and the, you know, UAHF, or, you know, the kind of hollow threats, I guess, from Bitmain, well, they might not be hollow, but I think a lot of it's just kind of like chest pounding, you know, like rah, 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 you know. I do think that there is value in mining. Like, you know, I don't want people to think that they're, you know, that I don't think that miners do contribute to the ecosystem. I really think they do. And I think we've seen, you know, that's probably the reason that proof of stake has never really become a thing. It's because proof of work works. You know, Satoshi Nakamoto's implementation of proof of work is really the tried, tested, you know, way of distributed consensus. It's the best we've got. And so I think miners, you know, we don't necessarily want to get them offside. You know, like, miners will win if they want to win, right? They control the bulk of the hashing power in the world. And so I think it's a real shame that users and miners haven't been able to come to a solution. I think one way or another we're going to get SegWit. It seems like, which is funny to me, because it's like the miners come back with SegWit 2x, and it's like, I thought you guys hated SegWit. What's going on? Like, okay, so we're getting SegWit either way. My real problem is actually with Bitcoin Core and the developers. Like, I think that they have a duty to the community, as kind of like the trusted, level-headed people that have been elected to be able to control the protocol, or the future of the technology. And I think they have to stop being so kind of spineless and not having, you know, a backbone when it comes to having an opinion on this stuff, right? They should come up
with them is they've been quiet, somewhat quiet about this whole.
Yeah.
They should stand, make a line in the sand, say we stand here.
Exactly.
I mean,
and there's no consensus. There's no consensus amongst them. Like, the core team is so you know, it's good that they're distributed, but why didn't they hold a meeting and say, let's try and solve this problem instead of conflating it by remaining silent? You know, and that's their responsibility. Like, a good development team would say, let's go and talk to the miners. Let's go and talk to the users. Let's come together as a collective team and come back with a proposal. But they didn't, and the result has been that users have had to go and choose something else, and miners have had to go and do their own thing, right? Like, there needs to be guidance in any of these things, and I think there hasn't been somebody kind of like leading the hand properly. Bitcoin Core, it's on them.
Okay, good. That's I'm glad that's your opinion. That's good to hear. All right, so let's go to some questions. I'll go into the chat first, and we'll go into some of the Reddit and the Twitter questions here. The first one, let me see here. All right, let's have a look. Question is, to what level is he involved with Dogecoin currently? I'm assuming you, Jackson. What level are you involved?
No, they're talking about you.
Not me. I own like 420. That's because Brian sent me that as a tip. So your coin works.
Nice.
And you can send it
Yeah.
for 0 fees very quickly.
Yeah, I made a video. Oh,
It's a
okay.
secret.
Let's not tell anybody that. You know.
No, it's yeah, that is one cool thing about Dogecoin is the low fees. Litecoin has like low fees as well. Like there's coin scaling discussions too much to talk about. But the yeah, I'm not really super involved with Dogecoin core development. There's a team of 3 people that run that. And you can see them on the GitHub repo. They recently posted on Reddit that there is another release coming later in this year. It's going to include the SegWit code because it'll be rebased off Bitcoin, but they're not activating it. And their reasons for not activating SegWit are, well, Dogecoin isn't having any scaling issues right now. I kind of say do what the people want, and so they should. I kind of implore them to go and talk to the miners, talk to the users, figure out a solution to this thing. But I'm not really involved. Like I have no way that I can kind of get them influence anything. So a lot of people come to me every day and they're like, "Hey, can you get the Dogecoin developers to do this?" Sadly, I cannot, but I think that's a good thing.
Now, but do you still support Dogecoin or the community? Because you did say that it was toxic. The community was toxic. How do you feel now? Is it still toxic, or is there even a community there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what I was referring to when I said the community is toxic, just to be clear, was the people that were essentially shouting at anybody that would potentially criticize Moolah. So those were specifically the people that I was kind of talking to there, like people with dollar signs in their eyes, and today I think the community is obviously a lot smaller, but there are some people that are coming back into it because there's this recent pump in the value of the thing. I'm involved. Like I'll go on the subreddit from time to time, and if anybody ever wants to talk about the thing, I'll definitely talk about it. I think it's just kind of plodding along, and I don't necessarily see the question. The question I always have is when people say, "Hey, what's next for Dogecoin?" and I say, "Well, what's it doing? What's it not doing now that you think it should be doing? Like, is it too slow? What's the problem?" And they're like,
It's too
yeah,
fast. You need to slow it down to
99% of the time, 99% of the time, the answer is, "Oh, well, I want the price to go higher." And I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Well, the
Seriously.
answer is simple. Tell them to buy more Dogecoin. I mean,
and that's the thing, right? So they just want me to get back into when people say something like that, like, "Oh, I think you should try and pump the value," I immediately kind of just, stop listening, because I care about the technology, and the technology is doing what it's designed to do right now. It's doing it pretty well. And if there's a market fit for that and people want to use it as an actual currency, it should, right? As you just said, it's fast. It's basically transaction free, transaction fee free. So yeah, I'm involved, but I'm kind of just like another Dogecoin user at this point. I'm not doing anything actively.
all right. I have another question. It's I read Doge was started as an inside joke. Is that true? So I know you already went over it, but it is a question. Let's just go over it. It was a meme, right? Is that the whole thing, right?
Well, yeah, Doge itself is a photo of this Shiba Inu from Japan called Kabuso, and they know that the dog and its owner know about Dogecoin. They're big fans. But yes, it was a meme, and then, as I said earlier, because I like the meme and I also like altcoins, I combined the two into kind of a joke on Twitter that spiraled out of control.
So I guess the answer was yes. It was a not an inside joke, but maybe just
definitely a joke. Definitely a joke. A
Okay.
piece of satire or parody, if you will.
Excellent. Let me see. Is there any other questions from the chat, or they're just chit chatting? Okay, okay. So let's go to the Reddit. Brian, do you have the Twitter? Why don't you go on the Twitter questions?
Yeah, and I think they overlap, the ones you have and I have. So we have one here that is
Oh,
you're
Are you all right?
I'm okay.
Yeah, Jackson, are you still there? Yeah, the picture is still on you because this is all about you, Jackson.
Okay, so we have a question. Yeah, you're breaking up. I think you're back now.
James, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. We see you. Can you hear us?
Hey, sorry about that. Something happened with the connection.
Oh, it's probably
All
the
right.
NSA.
Okay. In the Doge chat. Okay.
All right, so from Reddit, we have a question here from user Gary Littlemore. He asks, where does Jackson see Dogecoin and cryptocurrency in general in 10 years' time?
Absolutely. So, hey, Gary. I think that Dogecoin itself, I think it really depends on what the community and the people that are using it today make of it. And it could totally have longevity if people find creative uses for it. I've always been a big fan of the micro kind of payment thing and using it for good. So I'd love to see more charities and kind of not-for-profit stuff spring up around it. And really the only people that can do that are the community. So I implore people to do that. If they do, then maybe like I was saying, these coins are like internet companies focused around a protocol. And if they can come up with a really good use case for that protocol, then the thing will still be around in 10 years. Cryptocurrency, I think, in a decade will look extremely different. We might not even be operating on a blockchain. We might be operating on something different completely. Hopefully, we'll have something that's less wasteful than proof of work, but achieves the same level of security. I think what I'm trying to get at is the protocol will still be around, or the technology will be. Some of the internet companies will not be. So some of the blockchain companies will not be. What I mean by that is some of the coins will probably diminish into the background. Now that could very well include Bitcoin. If something goes terribly wrong, but if you look at something like Ethereum, which is very much like a V1 alpha version of that implementation, and frankly, Ethereum's current implementation just does not scale for distributed computing. Like Ethereum itself, might not be the smart contract implementation we're using in a decade's time. Actually, I highly doubt that it will be. The technology is going to shift in huge ways, and the brand names, who cares about the brand names of the tokens, care about the technology. Invest in the companies that you think are going to do the most to influence that technology, in the most innovative things.
What about Ethereum Classic? Is that essentially the same as well? I'm assuming
It's the same. It's just
right.
it's the same. It's just Ethereum. I laugh about Ethereum Classic because it happened after the whole DAO thing. That's kind of all a joke to me. Like, come on. Ethereum proved that their blockchain isn't immutable, and they did that. So.
Is there any more questions? Wasn't there one on Twitter, Brian, or?
Yeah, but I'm going to read the question, and then you guys can decipher an answer based on what you think they're asking.
Okay.
Here it is. Is it important that holders and traders of cryptocurrency also be users of the currency in its truest meaning?
Yes. Yes. So that's a very good question.
Yes.
So I totally understand what they're asking. So I think what they're asking is people that are holding and trading this thing as an investment vehicle, should they also be using it like a currency? And it's actually really kind of, the incentives aren't aligned in today's world to do that, sadly. I think maybe something with Dogecoin, maybe, but actually let me explain why the incentives aren't aligned. When you're going through like severe price volatility, like we are right now, a bubble, right? As a trader, as somebody that's holding a bunch of cryptocurrency, it's not in your best interest to sell it because it could be worth a lot more tomorrow, right? So that's out the gate. There's also the problem on the merchant's side because the Bitcoin they accept today for something might be worth less tomorrow. So the incentives for both parties aren't aligned, right? What actually helps adoption from that standpoint is price stability, because then you can use it knowing that there's a very low chance of you seeing a loss. Now, the other problem that is kind of interfering with the use of cryptos as a currency is the way that it's currently taxed in many countries, including the US. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but hopefully this is going to open some eyes to it. But the way the IRS treat any cryptocurrency in the US, at least, and I think it extends to other countries, is they treat it as property. So think of it as like a stock or trading property, something like that. That means that whenever you use it, whenever you make a trade between two coins, like if I trade between like Steemit and Dogecoin, or I trade between Bitcoin and Dogecoin, that is a taxable event. And so when I do that trade, even if I haven't recognized a USD profit or loss, I have to declare what it was when I got the Bitcoin, and then declare what it was when I sold it to get the Dogecoin, right? And I have to pay taxes on that. And yeah, and a lot of people don't realize this. I'm sure that a lot of people aren't actually following the rules, and this might actually be a problem for people at one point in the future. But the reason that extends to it not being used as a currency is that it also applies when I use that thing to go and pay for something. So say I buy something, I go and buy a coffee with some Bitcoin, which I wouldn't do today, but say I go and buy some coffee with Dogecoin. Buying that coffee is a taxable event. So I have to declare the cost basis when I got that Dogecoin a year ago, and whether I made a gain or a loss at the point that it got converted and changed hands for the good or service, because it was a trade, right? And so instantly, a lot of people use like purse.io, for instance, which is a great service. I love the team and Andrew, but the taxes, you're supposed to pay tax for every purchase based on the increase you saw from the time you procured the Bitcoin to the time that you bought something with it. And so that kind of regulatory thing stops people from wanting to use it as a currency. Like, why would you? And so my kind of like notion with that is that, yes, like, to answer the question, people that are trading should be, like, if they see the value in the technology, they should be using it like a real currency. The incentives just aren't aligned right now for them to. And I seriously don't think the incentives will ever align unless regulation changes considerably, or if people start actually seeing Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies to have some tangible value intrinsically, irregardless of their exchange back to the US dollar. So as long as I think that one Doge is worth one Doge, and you agree one Doge is worth one Doge, then I can pay you that for a coffee, and then you can go and pay for it to be used somewhere else, right? That's how a currency should operate. Is, I don't get around, whenever I spend a US dollar, I don't get around thinking, oh, how much is this worth in Canadian dollars right now? Am I making a profit or loss? Yeah, right. So I think we need to get out of that and start thinking about just, if we believe that these currencies have actual intrinsic value, then start acting like it. And merchants and sellers and buyers, I should say, on both sides have to agree to that.
Now, Jackson, I have a question for you on the mining of Dogecoin. Now, it was set to infinite. Am I right about that? And why was it set to infinite?
You're talking about the money supply. So how many coins can ever be mined? Yeah. So there was a bug because Billy and I didn't really understand the code at the time. Remember, this was created in like a couple of days over a couple of beers. So we didn't really fully understand the Bitcoin code. We were learning, right? We were learning when we did it. As a result, the money supply, or what we thought was the cap on the top of the money supply, wasn't actually the right variable that we were setting. And what happens is that at the rate which Dogecoin is mined with its like 1 minute block time, basically it got to 100 billion with the regular block rewards. And then after that, every block reward was just a flat rate of 10,000 Doge. So what that results in is a yearly inflation, or a yearly additional around 5 billion Dogecoin being added to that 100 billion every year. And some people are like, that's a terrible thing. Inflationary currencies are the worst. Oh, it's not going to make me money. Well, heads up, if it's a currency shouldn't be making you money. But anyway, I don't. if you're treating it as an investment opportunity, then you should be able to go down to Starbucks and buy, you know, a latte with your Netflix stock. But, you know, but anyway, the reason that that isn't a problem is because there are hacks, there are scams, there are lost coins. Like basically every day I get an email from somebody, hey, I lost the private keys when I like changed laptops. There was $1 million Dogecoin in there. So because of this, the 5 billion is really like, it's a 5% inflation rate every year. It's actually rather small. And we haven't really seen it have any impact on, like, you know, the market, any problems with it. It's really just making up for lost coins. So I don't necessarily see it to be an issue.
Okay, and you also, well, not you, but the mining of it. Did it merge with Litecoin?
Yeah. So I should also just mention that the decision to leave that, there was like a GitHub like issue thread. It's like one of the longest GitHub issue threads I've ever seen for that bug with the inflation, and people basically agreed that we should leave it in rather than change it. So it was kind of like, you know, a distributed decision. But on the merge mining, yeah. So what happened was that because like back when we started out, like script hashing algorithm was kind of ASIC proof, as most things tend to do, and so we were in a kind of a dire situation where there was so much mining power that was mining Litecoin, for instance. If somebody wanted to come over, if one of those miners, those big miners, pointed all their hashing power at Dogecoin, they could easily have more than 51% of the network. There goes your consensus. So what we did was we actually implemented something called AUX-POW, or auxiliary proof of work. And Namecoin actually invented this when they did it with Bitcoin for their whole distributed domain name service. But the premise is basically that Litecoin miners can point at this kind of collective group of script coins that are all using the same hashing power, and they're rewarded when they find a block on all these different ones, right? So pools can basically automate this for you as well. Yeah, so the benefit of that is that we actually get all the Litecoin hashing power as well. And it's actually contributing to our security. It can't be used to attack us. So, yeah.
That's good. Now, I have another question related to that. If I was mining Litecoin, can I dual mine Dogecoin at the same time? Since it's
that's how it works. That's how it works. You're submitting the proof. Yeah, that's how it works.
Okay, I just want to let the audience know that you can, since they're merged mine, if you're mining Litecoin, you can automatically at the same time mine Dogecoin. So get your free Doge and become a Dogenaire. And let me ask, Jackson, are you a Dogenaire?
I'm not. I
no.
I know. I was at one point.
Let me send you one Bitcoin, and you could become a Dogenaire now.
I could. So Billy and I probably had like I said, like maybe 10 million or so Dogecoin a month, like between the two of us, like when we first started out, and we gave it all to the charities that we were running when we first started out. So, and I tipped a bunch of it to people on Reddit as well. So, unfortunately, don't have over 1 million Doge. I actually don't think many people in the development team do either. We're just in it for fun, right? It's not really about how much you have, but you know.
You're a good man, Jackson. You are a good man. So.
Sure.
Now, I have some questions here that I want to go, and this is where I'm gonna converse with you a little bit. Okay. Is I did want to talk more about Ryan Kennedy. It took like 3 years. Do you think at least 3 years just to charge him with the fraud?
Yeah.
And you know, it seemed like it took a long time. Everyone kind of knew, and after Mintpal, do you remember Mintpal?
Oh yeah.
Now there was some controversy in that because apparently he had a Bitcoin that he was supposed to hold as well as a lot of people invested in Mintpal. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. He somehow acquired Mintpal. Basically, Mintpal got hacked, and then he swooped in, bought them up for basically nothing. Then they basically did a redesign of Mintpal and convinced everybody it was safe to use again. And then Mintpal mysteriously got hacked again. And you know, so he probably made off with all that money as well.
Right. So how do you feel after all this time? I mean, I know you say you feel like it's justified and everything, but do you think that closes? Because at the time you were you were trying to tell people straight out, this guy's scamming everybody,
Right. Yeah.
right? And do you think it's because the I would say foolishness, ignorance of the Doge community, because they were just so new to this thing that they just like I could have scammed them. I could have gone in there and say, hey, then give me
Right.
all your Dogecoin and
They're a very
charity.
susceptible group of people. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what it is, it's partly that. I think it's also when something makes you rich or makes you money, um, you are inclined to sing its praises, right? You're not going to go out and say something negative about it, and you
But
don't want
these
to believe
people,
that. Like
these
for the
people,
reason that with the Moolah pie, right? Is these people were told that they just bought a share in this company, and obviously these people don't want to convince themselves, or they're trying to convince themselves otherwise, that this company's not a scam, right? They're like, oh, I won't hear any of it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's a legitimate thing, right? I would never have just put $1,000 into something that is a scam. And so that's that built-in incentive to kind of shout down anybody that is potentially critical of that thing. And I think what it takes, unfortunately, is for these people to get hurt once for them to learn. And it's going to be a very, very hard lesson for a lot of people when it happens on this second run that we're currently in.
yeah, but at the time they didn't really have the money in hand. They just thought they had some magical number.
Well, that's what crypto is all about, right?
Well, that's true, but my
That's
point
it.
is they never really realized any of the benefits at
They
all,
didn't.
but they thought they were, and that thinking, that belief, that false belief is what drove them to I guess, to the end, in some ways.
Exactly. And
Okay,
that's essentially what drives like this whole like hodl mentality.
right,
I'm not gonna believe that the price is gonna go down. I'm gonna delude myself into not even considering the fact that it'll
right,
go down.
right.
I think people a lot of us are smarter than that these days, and we kind of have a more realistic, grounded approach. Like these markets are speculative and they bounce around a bit, but people that haven't been in the game for very long don't understand that, and so it's kind of like cows to the slaughter, just coming in like, should I buy some Ethereum? Oh, straight into a scam. And
Okay, but
yeah,
do you feel justified now? I mean, how do you feel now after everything? Ryan Kennedy being charged with fraud, the community kind of, the Doge community being in somewhat, I wouldn't say shambles, but it's not what it was before.
I think a lot of the
And you were the
people,
one that's crying wolf, and they were attacking you.
yeah, I'm always the bad guy. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of people learned a lesson, and my only hope is that those people then, the ones that didn't leave the cryptocurrency community, I think a lot of them just were just into it because it was funny, and then they got burned on something that was supposed to be funny, and they've probably left. But the people that stayed around, I think it's probably been hopefully not too costly lesson, because obviously things weren't as expensive back then. It's cost them a little bit, but it's actually taught them a very, very valuable life lesson. So that's all I can hope for, right? I'm not going to go back and say to these guys, like I told you so. You guys should have listened. Like, it's all in the past. I think hopefully they're just more grounded and realistic in their kind of evaluation of the space now.
Okay, and you are also on Steemit, is that correct?
Yeah. So I've been posting those videos on Steemit. Steemit's an interesting idea. I think it's actually a use case for cryptocurrency, which kind of excited me, and it kind of was similar to what was happening with the tip bot on Reddit. And so that kind of like the whole idea of like micropayments and solving the problem of publishers not getting rewarded, like journalists, content producers, right? That's a huge problem that up until recently the ads have been the only solution, and that's not a great solution. So any kind of platform that can solve that in a novel way, I think is interesting. So yeah, I've been posting over there. Like, I think that again, that's a community that is kind of is not dwindling, but a community that has died down a lot since it first started.
Steemit, you're talking about Steemit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my reservations on it because it seems to be it was kind of hyped, of course, as a token, And I
Yeah.
don't know why would a social platform would necessarily need its own token and the way it's set up, and also the way it's being kind of gamed in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Do you,
There's ways to game it, and the other thing is that if you look at the platform, there haven't been really any updates in like the last year or so that I've seen, at least. And I think that's mostly because like the lead dev, that Daniel Larimer guy, went on to do BitShares, and now he's renamed BitShares to EOS, and he's done an ICO on it.
no,
So,
I think BitShares is still there, but it's BitShares plus Steemit that equals EOS. But I don't even know what EOS stands for. I think it stands for Ethereum on steroids or something.
oh, please tell me that's not the case. That's just cringeworthy. Oh my god.
All right, and other than that, I mean, I think people should really listen to you in
Oh,
this
thank you.
video, because you did experience a lot. I saw it for myself. I didn't personally experience it, but I was watching it. What I do is I don't invest in cryptocurrencies unless they're 5 years in existence, and that way it gives me time to watch them. Unfortunately, Doge at the time, you just started creating it, and so I didn't invest in it, but I did watch the whole space, and I think a lot of people coming into the space should definitely learn from all your lessons. And again, all the link to the video, to the video with Ben. It was Ben, you.
Ben, me, Alex Green, and this other guy, Landon, who was his chief operating officer.
Right, and they could watch that, and I also want to talk about Craig Wright, because I want to draw some parallels between Craig Wright and Alex Green, because if you notice, Alex Green threatens to sue everybody. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to take you to court, and obviously the guy's a scammer. Now, if you look at Craig Wright,
like flag. Yeah.
Yeah, Craig Wright, what does he do? I'm going to sue you. You tell me I'm not Satoshi Nakamoto, I'm going to sue you. I mean, I think there's some strong parallels here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, I think it's even harder for me because I'm an Australian, right? And so, this scammy Australian guy who's claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, he's just, I shouldn't call him a scammer because he'll sue me. But I'm always very, instantly, like my kind of scam alert goes on whenever anybody at the slightest bit of critique is like, that's libel, that's slander. Okay, like, go home. I don't know. I think that whole situation's ridiculous, but he's been able to actually, he's kind of a very well-trained sociopath, and the same was true with Alex Green. And these people are able to convince others through their kind of like exuberance and their passion. They're very charming to certain people, right? Some people see straight through it, but there are, people within his kind of like gravity who are working with him on this. I forget what his thing is, N chain or something, but that have obviously kind of fallen for it. And so he's made heaps of money off it, and it's sad. Hopefully it's kind of constrained to its own little corner of the room, and problem is ICOs, but because God, there's a lot of sociopaths in that as well. But he's just one of those personalities that I knew out the gate was like, no.
All right, Brian, do you have anything you would like to say? Because I know Brian's a big Doge fan. He's probably wants you to get a donation from you or something. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm just kidding, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
He said that because I work with some nonprofits.
Cool. Good stuff, man.
Right on, thanks. But no, I'm not going to ask you for a donation.
I think that's a great use case though for cryptocurrency. Like, use this stuff for good. Use it for non-for-profits. Yeah.
Right on. I am looking on how to figure out how to incorporate Bitcoin and or blockchain technologies into the nonprofits with whom I work, because I think it could be huge. If we were able to do it properly, then we could lead the way for a lot of nonprofits to be able to do the same thing.
All right. Yeah.
But,
I totally agree.
Well, I had a question. You said Steemit, it was a really good case study for how to utilize blockchain technologies.
Mm-hmm.
What else have you found to be a good case study?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think what I've seen a lot of with, especially with this ICO craze, is a lot of people trying to shoehorn existing ideas into blockchain. Like it's this, but on blockchain. You know, it's kind of like it's this, but it's this. You know, it's the Uber for this kind of paradigm, right? And you know, and so you have all these stupid use cases that are like kind of going out there and saying, oh, we're going to do this random thing that doesn't need to be on a blockchain. I think the best use cases are existing inefficient systems which currently have some form of a marketplace. And so that's why I think content creation is one of them. There is a marketplace. Somebody publishes something, it gets eyeballs. Today, the way you pay is with ads. And I think the same thing can, you know, apply to a bunch of different things like search engines, any sort of like online e-commerce system. Like come on, it's a digital currency and there's hardly any e-commerce usage. Like, what are we doing? You know, anything that has an existing kind of way in which value exchanges hands already, like it's just begging for this kind of technology, right? It's a no-brainer. And so I think rather than shoehorn other random ideas into blockchain, we should actually go and try and find these use cases of things. Another one's remittance. Global remittance, and nobody's actually nailed this, but you know, sending money from one side of the world to the other is very expensive and inefficient today. And if somebody was able to nail that with a really good user experience, like that's another, like it's an existing marketplace. Western Union do it today. It's costly and super inefficient. Like take those models and make them efficient. Like that's why I actually had, you know, I was kind of interested in what the basic attention token were doing with Brave, but then they completely screwed up on their ICO, and there's like 100 people that hold the thing, right? But that actually had promise, right? Let's reinvent the advertising model. Like that's a huge market, and you know, there's people every day getting these stupid ads in front of them or paywalls or all this kind of stuff that would love to have more targeted ads and be paid for it. Great. It all comes down to the execution, and you know, unfortunately, they didn't do the right thing there. But yeah. Basically, go and find something that has a market, and then see how do I apply blockchain to that. And I think in most cases, you'll find how it's being done today is probably inefficient.
Has anyone been really successful?
No.
Okay.
And that's because I think they get like halfway there, and then they're just like, oh, I'm going to go on to like. Here's the thing: success won't come straight away, and so I think success will. You'll see some adoption, but then you have to keep working on it, right? Because you know. You have to convince the mainstream that this thing is more efficient. You have to align the incentives. So the user is going to go and start using, you know, something like Steemit or something like, you know, the basic attention token. You have to, that takes time, right, to change. And I think a lot of people, they're in it for like 6 to 12 months and they're like, any money off this? Like, I'm not super rich yet. I was promised that I was going to get rich off cryptocurrency startups. And then they go and do another thing, right? And they just leave that thing on the ground. And I think it'll be sad to see if that's what happens with Steemit. And, you know, it probably is what's going to happen, sadly. But, you know, people need to, like, come up with really good execution plan and then just stick with it. It's hard to stick with it because the markets fluctuate so much, right? So, like, when Bitcoin's going up and down and crashing and everything, like, you know, I'd have a heart attack if I was one of these guys that took funding in Bitcoin. I didn't know what was, I could lose all of my money tomorrow. Like, that's scary. And so I actually advise most startups today to go and get traditional funding, like if you were building an actual internet business, and that'll give you the runway to not have to worry, right? And you've got a solid like 12 months or 2 years to nail the execution and convince everybody of it. Because you're not going to get into the mainstream unless you start acting like how people do it in the mainstream.
Right.
Now,
go ahead, James.
Okay, I did want to ask you one more thing. You did a video recently of hardware wallets and different types, paper wallets and everything. I noticed a lot of people pushing like these hardware wallets, but in your video, you categorize them from like 1 being least secure to 6 being the most secure. You categorize those as 5. And then you categorize the paper wallets being 6.
Yes.
But when I hear other people talking, they're making a claim that hardware wallets are the most secure. What is yeah?
Well, you know, so the reason that the only reason that I say that is like hardware wallets are extremely secure because you have it on your person at all times. When you do plug it in and you use one of those Chrome extensions to transact with the network, you are in many cases relying on a third party. So that's one thing to know. But like, you know, it's a single point of failure, but it's not a huge, like there's no chance of you getting hacked. So that's good. The reason I said that a paper wallet is number 6 and the most secure is because you're not carrying it on you at all times. And in most cases, like the paper wallet, by the very nature of the fact that it's printed on a piece of paper, it can never interface with a computer. So if you plug that USB into a compromised machine, then you can, in many cases, like if there's potential there for a man-in-the-middle attack on an infected machine. With a paper wallet, that can never happen because it's a piece of paper. So you just take a picture of the QR code for the private key and you're done. So like in very essence, like just having a piece of paper in a safety deposit box or a safe somewhere that's like fireproof is definitely the most secure. It's not a very useful way of storing something because you obviously can't use it. But that's why I said it was the most secure.
Okay. I personally feel that these hardware wallets are kind of pushed really hard because people are being paid or get some incentive to push them. And
Sure.
and I use paper wallets. There's nothing wrong with them. And I also spend them. You know, you have to just do it the right way.
You just got to scan a code. It's not actually that hard.
Yeah. And on top of that, they're free, right? You know, you can download them on GitHub for free. And so why would I pay like $100? But I just see this on the YouTube videos and people just pushing, you know, hardware
wallets. That's what I said. I think in the video I said I think it's kind of like a niche, like enthusiast community right now. Like it's the people that are, you know, really into it, you know, and they're not just like, I don't want to pay like $150 just for a USB stick to put my keys on. Like, no, I'm, you know, I think that frankly I store mine either in paper wallets or in like an SPV client that is actually interacts with the network itself. So hardware wallets are cool. Like if people like them, they like them. But I do agree that I think these hardware wallet companies probably paid for a huge amount of stock to be produced somewhere in China, and now they're like desperately like, we need to sell this stuff because we need to become profitable. So yeah.
I have a question for you, Jackson, about paper wallets, and maybe you might know the answer. So if you generate a paper wallet offline, right, you make the public and private key, and then you use a passphrase encryption on it, right? If you generated that wallet offline, how does the blockchain, or how is that password utilized? How is it known throughout the system to unlock that key?
Yeah, really good question. So there are multiple BIPs specifications for how password wallets can be encrypted, and there's certain encryption schemes, right? So all that happens when you generate that private key in an offline fashion, which you should probably do on an air-gapped machine, like one that's not connected to a network. If you do that, when you apply the password, all you're doing is basically putting an encryption cipher, like encrypting that string with that password. And the method of encryption is a known protocol or standard that can then obviously be reversed. And so that's why it can function in that way, is because there's standards around this stuff. It's not just like, you know, people using different ones. Yeah. But in a lot of cases, like, you know, if say two different wallets use different standards for how they password encrypted something, you would have to use the original, not on the same machine, but you'd have to use the same code, right? The same client to do it.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Do you have
absolutely.
Do you have any more questions, Brian, or anybody from the audience? By the time they hear this, it's probably too late. But
well, yeah,
I gotta get going in a second anyway.
Yeah,
so
I think we got to wrap this up. But thank you, Jackson Palmer. Before we leave, tell people where they can find you. I know you got a YouTube. Your link is down in the notes. But tell
yeah, so you can find me at youtube.com/Jackson Palmer. And I'm also on Twitter, /Jackson with 2 M's, UMM Jackson. So definitely, yeah, I'm going to be posting more and more videos that try to give like an unbiased, down-to-earth opinion on this stuff. And I really appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming on. Hopefully, we can have you on again, maybe after everything crashes, and so you can say, "I told you,
Don't jinx
told
it.
you." You know.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. Have
All
a
right.
great night.
Bye
Thanks,
bye,
Jackson.
everybody.
See ya.